Hi there, this is Brent Smith, the Common Constitutionalist for the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. I'm outdoors once again because it's a beautiful day in New Hampshire. And today, excuse me, it's a beautiful day. I think I swallowed the bug. But at any rate, today we're going to be talking about stirring the pot. Actually, not stirring the pot, smoking the pot. And doing the pot oil and all sorts of stuff. Legalized marijuana. And what Trump says about it, what we think he might do about it, what he thinks he might do about it. So all that fun stuff today on the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. You're watching the Common Constitutionalist Weekend Video Podcast. Alright, so welcome back. And again, this is Brent Smith and I'm the Common Constitutionalist. And today's video podcast is going to be entitled Trump may legalize pot. Well, it's not his decision to make, but we'll just leave it at that. So this is from the Daily Mail, or at least the starters from the Daily Mail. President Donald Trump said Friday that he's inclined to support a bipartisan effort in Congress to ease the U.S. ban on marijuana, a proposal that would dramatically reshape the nation's legal landscape for pot users and businesses. Well, I'm going to go through this and then I'll give you my thoughts toward the end. Maybe I'll mix it up a little bit. It depends on how ticked off I get about this or irritated, whatever. And we'll just see how things go. So the federal ban that puts marijuana on the same level as LSD and heroin has created a conflict with more than 24 states that have legalized pot in some form, creating a two-tiered enforcement system where cannabis can be both legal and not. Okay, fine. Fabulous. The legislation would ensure states have the right to determine the best this is going to be hard to hold my tongue through this, but I'll try. The legislation, federal legislation, would ensure states have the right to determine the best approach to marijuana within their borders. But some U.S. restrictions would remain, including recreational sales to people under 21. Yes, indeed. So, yeah, okay. This is hard. The proposal introduced Thursday has support from members of Congress from both parties, including U.S. Republican Senator from Colorado, Cory Gardner. Yes, indeed, from Colorado, because Colorado is the new the boon state for marijuana. I support Gardner. I know exactly what he's doing, Trump told reporters in Washington when asked about the legislation. We're looking at it, but I probably will end up supporting that, yes. So that's what the Trumpster said. Alrighty. The president's remarks placed him in conflict with U.S. Attorney General Jeff Sessions, an outspoken opponent of marijuana who lifted an Obama administration policy and freed federal prosecutors to more aggressively pursue cases in states that have legalized marijuana. Okay, leave that one alone for now. Boy. Sessions has also lobbied Congress to reduce current protections for medical marijuana. Trump has sent mixed signals on the drug. While campaigning for president, he pledged to respect the states that legalize marijuana, but he also has criticized legislation and implied it should be stopped. So he's on both sides of the fence. What a shocker when it comes to Trumpster. No big deal. We should be used to that by now, people. Leave it alone. Gardner said the legislation, that's Senator Cory Gardner from Colorado, said that legislation would ensure Washington respects the will of the voters in each state, whether laws provide for legalization or prohibition. He said in a statement released Thursday that the federal government is, quote, closing its eyes and plugging its ears, unquote, to spreading legalization, but Washington should not interfere with any state's legal marijuana market. Man, this is difficult. But I told myself before I'm going to try to get through this and then start making my comments. Trump's remarks Fridays echoed a promise that Gardner said he received privately from the president in April, but that was April. I mean, that was what, a month and a half ago, a month ago, whatever, to support legislation protecting the marijuana industries in states that have legalized the drug. All right, I got a break from this for just a second. The states that have legalized the drug, they're not legalizing the drug for the sake of the people and because the voters want it and all that other crap. They're legalizing the drug so they can tax it, because most states are broke. They're dead frickin' broke, and so they need the extra tax revenue to grow the government even further, grow state governments even further, and expand their bureaucratic footprint even further than they do now. And so that's why the liberal states, most of whom, no, all of whom, who are dead frickin' broke, are legalizing marijuana so they can tax the crap out of it and get more money to expand the government. That's the only reason why they're doing this. They don't give a crap what the voters think. Look around you. They do stuff all the time that are completely opposite of what the voters want, and it doesn't make any difference. The bottom line is they want the cashola. That's it. Okay, so let's leave that at that. Another co-sponsor of strange bedfellows. Another co-sponsor of the measure, Democrat U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, Pocahontas, said in a statement that Washington needs to get out of the business of outlawing marijuana. Yes, they certainly do. Wow. Okay. I'm just stunned because that's the first time I think I've ever agreed with on anything. California, but I'm not giving anything away at this point. California, home to 1 in 8 Americans, no, 1 in 8 residents of the United States, not Americans, residents of the United States, because probably half their population is illegal by now, but I digress. California, home to 1 in 8 Americans, launched the nation's largest legal marijuana marketplace on January 1, but thousands of businesses that have been licensed are still facing the threat of federal prosecution. A major problem stemming from the federal ban, major banks have been reluctant to do business with marijuana companies, fearing it could lead to prosecution. In California, for example, paying taxes and other transactions are often carried out in cashola, sometimes in vast amounts. And that's got to be ticking off California, because they're look at the revenue, the tax revenue that they're losing, as if they made anything to begin with, that they're not further stealing from the general public because these transactions are in cash. So this has really got to be rubbing California the wrong way. Holy crap. You know how dead broke they are. Okay, so there you have it. Trump is for legalization, not for legalization, is for legalization. I don't know, is he really? I have no idea. Who knows? Nobody knows. I doubt that he even knows, frankly. But I figured out long ago, at this point, you never hold Trump to his rhetoric or his tweeting, because his final policy decisions often don't match up with the rhetoric or the tweeting. So you just don't worry about that kind of stuff. It's kind of like, the G7, G8 thing, where he wants to let Putin back in the G7 to make it to again, recapture the G8. Well, I don't know whether that's really how he feels. He just puts it out there to see how people react. A lot of this stuff is he's a counterpuncher. He's a good counterpuncher, and he loves doing this kind of stuff. He likes tweaking the media, and he's a good counterpuncher. That's his strength. So he puts this stuff out there, he throws it on the wall to see how people are going to react, and then he can react to their reaction, and he's very, very good at it. He's a dang master is what he is. So you don't ever, how many times I've said this, and how many times other conservatives have said this, because people look at us and we say, well, how can you support this guy? He's all over the map. Well, he's not all over the map. His rhetoric and his tweets are all over the map. Who cares about that kind of crap? Okay, we've We've locked ourselves into this political box, and this is the way how all politicians have to react and have to speak and have to think. Well, that's a crock, because it never works out that way. People hate politicians a lot of the times because they all seem like a bunch of freaking robots, and they all lie, and they never do what they say that they're going to do. And Trump is just so bloody refreshing, but if you look at his policies as opposed to his rhetoric, they don't always match. Matter of fact, they rarely ever match, and so that's the beauty of it. I'm frankly tired of saying it, but it bears repeating every time something like this comes up. We don't know what he's going to do on this, but there you go. But this kind of isn't the issue, whether he goes for it or doesn't go for it and whatever. It's none of the federal government's business what the states do about pot, or frankly, about most everything. This was never intended to be the federal government's job. It was never intended to be the Fed's job to police drugs nationally, okay? Let me put it in another way. All right, say my neighbor's son, he's grounded, okay? He's been put effectively by his dad on house arrest, all right? So he's not allowed to leave the house, he's not allowed to leave the ground, so to speak. So I'm outside and I see him sulking on his front porch one day, and he explains that he is grounded. He doesn't necessarily go into the whys, but I don't really care about the whys. And I, as the neighbor, listen to his tale of woe and immediately and unilaterally make the decision to unground him. I'm the neighbor, okay? This is my neighbor's kid. Maybe he's even a friend of mine, and the kid. And I make the decision, you're ungrounded. Just go on your merry way. Get on your bike, take a walk, do whatever you want to do. You can go. All right? He thanks me profusely, for whatever reason. We know the reason. So he thanks me and leaves the house, leaves the grounds, of which his father expressly told him not to. So then the dad comes home and asks if I had seen the son. And I said, sure. I lifted his punishment and sent him on his way. And the father looks at me like I've got three heads, and he goes ballistic and asks on what authority I think I can do such a thing. And obviously I have no authority other than the old "it takes a village to raise a child" thing, all right? The Hillary deal. But this is the point. The federal government steps in where it has no authority and just ungrounds this kid. Okay, the state says you're grounded, and the feds come in and say, oh, well, you're ungrounded. And we have the supremacy clause, supremacy clause, supremacy clause. That's not what the supremacy clause is. But kind of, well, whatever. I'm not going into that. So the Constitution, if you look, all you got to do is read the Constitution and just read it with an objective mind. Put the subjectivity away and just read it. Oh, by the way, we got to, before I go any further into this, let's take a quick break, and I'll be right back.
You're watching the Common Constitutionalist video podcast.
Yeah, baby! Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. At any rate, to recap, President Trump is thinking about rescinding the federal restrictions on marijuana and letting the states do what they want. Way to go, Thomas Jefferson. Donald Jefferson. Okay, so there you have it. The point about this is the Constitution, as I said before the break, grants no authority. There's no authorities for the feds to impose sweeping national drug laws on the states in the first place. So Trump, if he supports the bipartisan, everything's got to be bipartisan. Yay for bipartisanship. We're so cooperative. Yay. Sorry. If he supports this, he's basically really just resetting things back to where they should have been in the first place. It's not that big a deal. They're making it out to be a big deal. And I guess in today's convoluted world, it is a big deal, but it really shouldn't be a big deal. So the fact is that whenever there's a question about authority and responsibility of the national government or the federal government, all you got to do is go back and read the Constitution. Just read it, and if you read it enough times, you'll even know where to look, okay? The Supremacy Clause. And if there's ever a question about interpretation, that's simple enough too to figure out. It's real easy, because you just refer to the intent and the writings and the speakings and everything else of the guys who actually wrote it and voted on the Constitution. Those are the guys, the ratifiers, the writers and ratifiers and the editors. So first, whenever there's a question about authority or responsibility of the national or federal government, all you got to do is go back to the Constitution. Read the Constitution. Read it often. Read it enough to where you actually, when you need to look something up, you don't even have to go to the tape to an index or anything. You'll kind of know which article to look at, which amendment to look at. You want to kind of get that familiar with the Constitution, because it is the rule book. It's like the NFL. If you don't know the rule book, how are you going to play the game? How are you going to coach the game? You can't. You got to kind of know the rule book. You don't need to know every bloody phrase or paragraph or sentence or anything in the rule book. But as far as the Constitution, everybody should have a general working knowledge of the Constitution, enough to where you know what to refer to. So anyway, I digress once again. So you go back and you read the Constitution, and that's pretty simple. And if there's ever a question about the interpretation of what exactly they mean, that's easy enough, because all you have to go and do is go back to the writings, the Federalist Papers. That's the sales journal for the Constitution. They sold the Constitution to the people through the Federalist Papers, the explanation of the Constitution, and the intent of the guys that wrote it and voted on it, ratified the document. But the problem we have these days is that many of these learned experts, constitutional experts, simply don't agree with originalism. Well, you have to. If we want a constitutionally recognized republic, that's what we are, or a constitutional republic, representative republic, you have to agree with originalism. Because otherwise, it's this living document that they keep saying. You know, you just change the rules without having to amend anything. You just change the rules because it's a living, breathing document. Well, that's a crock too. So these so-called experts, they look at this thing and they read in stuff that's not there, and they don't read in stuff that is there, and they never take original intent of the writers and the voters, of the ratifiers of the Constitution, of which it's all spelled out. The Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, they had this big battle, so to speak, and the Federalists won out, kinda, and that's the way it got done. But you can clearly see the intent of the founders, of all these guys who voted and ratified and wrote the Constitution, what their intention was for each one of these articles and each one of these amendments. So, but it's human nature for these experts and for all of us to discount what we disagree with. Okay, if you disagree with something like the Second Amendment, people find they contort and they bend the words, and they leave stuff out, and they just, it's so easy to see what people are doing, because if they don't agree with the Second Amendment, they'll find a way to prove that it's not really what you say, what it's clear that it says, and what's clear that the founders meant by it. So it's the same way with all this stuff, with all the originalism, but you have to remain objectively originalist when you have a question about the Constitution. And so for me and many others, the Constitution is clear as it can be about the feds meddling in the state's business. They shouldn't. And it's not as even they're not supposed to, is that they shall not. They can't. They're not allowed to. It's not that they shouldn't be meddling in the state's business. They're not allowed to meddle in the state's business. That's what the 10th Amendment was. That's why it was so important. So it's just a simple chain of logic to follow. And I've been on this Federalist versus Anti-Federalist kick for as of late anyway. As if you read any of my stuff, or seen my recent podcast, that's basically what it's been about, history and the founders and Federalists versus Anti-Federalists. And at heart, I think I'm a Federalist. Most people are Federalists. You know, a limited federal government, and then the states do everything else. But more and more lately, I'm starting to think that it was the anti-Feds, the Anti-Federalists, who may have been more prescient than the Federalists. They're the ones that saw the future of, by just the creation of our national government, our federal government, how corrupt the national government would eventually become. And it's just a fact. No matter what, that's what happens to governments. They grow and they become, the more they grow, the larger they get, the more corrupt they'll be, and the more power they'll want for themselves. So, without the votes of at least some of these anti-Feds, the Anti-Federalists, the Constitution wouldn't even exist as we know it today. We wouldn't even have a Constitution. Therefore, something like drug laws, and I just put myself in the minds of any of these Anti-Federalists, no way these guys would have voted for ratification if they knew ahead of time that the national government would assume the authority of dictating drug laws to the states. If you could transport these founders to today, well, first off, they'd have a conniption anyway to see what America has become, what their ideal of America has become. But as far as the drug laws, there's no way that they would have signed the Constitution. They wouldn't have ratified. The Constitution wouldn't have been ratified if they gave the federal government power over the states to do these drug laws. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter what drugs it is. It's the state's purview. Federal government has nothing to do with it, just nothing. Within the state's borders, that is. So I agree with the Anti-Federalists. It's the state's job to police this kind of stuff, and I agree that if Trump goes along with it, basically he's just setting things right. He's setting things the originalist way, the way it was supposed to be, the way it was intended. It's not any great shakes. That's just the way it is. And I hate drugs. I can't stand them. I think they're completely useless. Hell, I don't even like to take an aspirin unless my head's about to explode. That's how much I don't like drugs of any kind, legal, illegal, whatever. It doesn't make any difference. I can't stand them no matter what. I think you're a fool to take them. Most everybody my age through the years has at least tried something at one point in time, and I did too, and it's completely stupid. And that was it. I think I tried pot once or twice when I was really, really much younger, and didn't like it then. I thought it was stupid then. So but again, it's not the job of the federal government. So if Trump does that, he's just simply putting it right. And he's in absolute odds once again with Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General. Boy, I got to tell you, I was a real fan of Jeff Sessions when he was a senator. I thought he was a good, solid constitutional conservative like a Ted Cruz, a Mike Lee, and these guys when he was a senator. But I don't know what the crap happened to Jeff Sessions, man. He has just become a complete waste of a suit. It's just pathetic, and it just ticks me off that he's still there and why Trump hasn't dumped him by now. People go back to the old, what was Trump supposed to do? Sessions screwed up from word go, and now he's at odds again. And again, somebody who understands the Constitution and still goes for the federal oversee of drugs throughout the states. Nah, there's something seriously wrong with that, man. There's nothing constitutional about that. So that's about all I've got for today. This kind of stuff just really, really irks me, and I'll tell you, if Trump does this, I just become a bigger and bigger fan. Again, I've never liked the bloviation. I don't like the tweeting. I don't like all the nonsense. But I understand why he does it, and I understand, frankly, that it's kind of necessary. That we've got, like I think I wrote an article a while back, a week or so ago, calling Trump the lunch pail billionaire. And that's what he is. He's the gravy-stained billionaire. He just doesn't give a crap. And nothing's getting to him. A lesser man, a lesser politician would have folded long ago and gone the way of the standard politician, where he just caves to everything that the legislature wants or everything that the media wants. Trump doesn't give a crap, and that's what is making him into such a great president. And believe you me, if he keeps on this path, he will be one of the greats. He will be one of the Washingtons, the Jeffersons, the Reagans, the Calvin Coolidges, those guys. He's going to be up there. They should, boy, I don't know. Maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, but so far he has demonstrated an absolute fealty, almost, to the Constitution, more so than anyone in my recent memory. So that's all I've got. This is the Common Constitutionalist, Brent Smith, signing off once again. Y'all have a blessed balance of the weekend. I certainly intend to. I'm out. See ya.